Hey, fellas, we thank you guys for joining with us today, and we're excited. We have a special guest with us, and it's definitely our privilege. Many of you guys know him, you watched him on the tube, you listening to him on the radio, and so we're just thank you to have Chris with us today, and I'm just going to turn the floor over to him. He's going to give some encouraging words to you guys, and then we'll get a chance to ask some questions at the end.
Thank you, Pastor, for having me. It's great to be here. I'm very excited. It's great to be able to share with you, brothers, and I'm going to share a few words, few motivational words, and then I'll open it up for questions with your pastor and some other men. And they could ask me about, what I talk about my relationship with the Lord, or even about sports, if that's what they want to ask about. I'm open to all of it. But I was asked to speak a little bit about keys to success. Keys to success. And let me, now that I think about it, let me back up and tell you a little bit about myself. Obviously, many of you know that I'm a sports broadcaster. I have been covering the NBA for over 25 years. But beyond that, I'm married. I've been married 25 years, happily married. I live in New Jersey. I have twin daughters who just graduated from college. In fact, one of them graduated from University of Pennsylvania in May. And now she's working as a lab manager at Yale up in Connecticut. And my other daughter graduated from Michigan, and now she's working at MSNBC. And so that's my family. And outside of the Lord, that's the most important thing to me in life. My priorities in life, and I would suggest they should be everybody's priorities in life, are God, family, and then career. In that order. So I want to share a little bit about keys to success. And I think the first key to success is to know God, and to know God through a vibrant, intimate, personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It's somewhat common sense. God created us. God knows all of the talents, the gifts, the skills that he's given us. He knows our needs, our wants, our desires. He knows what's going to make us happy. He knows what will make us sad, and what's good for us and what's bad for us. So in knowing God, we have access to all of that information. And so knowing God is, I believe, critical to our success. Now, you would say, rightly so, that there are many quote unquote successful people who don't know God. And that's true that they're successful in one sense. Certainly what we would define as success in America, becoming wealthy, becoming rich, becoming famous, doing a great job in a career. But even if you do become successful without God, if you don't know him, one, you really won't know the purpose of your success. So you may think that your success is just for you to be, have a lot of material things, for you to have power, maybe for you to, exhibit your power over other people. And you won't really be able to glorify God as much as you could through your success. But more importantly, remember, the scripture says, Ecclesiastes 3:11, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, it says, God has put eternity in our hearts. God has put eternity in our hearts. So in everyone's heart is eternity, and this striving to know God, because he's the only one who's eternal. And so there's a void in every human being's life, in every human being's heart, that can only be filled by God, who is eternal. And a lot of people who are successful, if they don't know God, there's an emptiness there. There's a void there. And that's why you see a lot of successful people who try to fill that void with alcohol, with drugs, with sex, with gambling, with power, with even being a workaholic, trying to fill that void. My wife and I, during this pandemic, we're watching the show Billions, and it's about billionaires. And I know it's fictional, but obviously there are a lot of real life examples I could point to too. But these people are billionaires. They have enough money for the next 3 generations to all be wealthy and live lavish. And yet they're not satisfied. They continue to push and want to make more and more and more money. And there's nothing wrong with making money, obviously, and a lot of money, but they're not satisfied with the billions of dollars they have. And they're not able to enjoy life like you would think that they should. I personally know wealthy people who we would say have everything you'd want in life, and yet they're unhappy. And as a result, there's a lot of turmoil in their life. Their relationships with their children aren't what they should be. Their relationship with their spouse isn't what it should be. You just may remember a year or two ago, the NBA commissioner, Adam Silver, said that most of the NBA players that he knows fairly well are unhappy. Now, these are young men with millions of dollars, young men with all the material things that they could possibly hope for, young men with beautiful women at their disposal, and they're unhappy. And Kyrie Irving, superstar point guard, came out and said, you know what? He's right. So think about that. And I would suggest that the reason many of them aren't happy is because they haven't filled that void that God has placed in their hearts with Jesus Christ. We've seen suicides from wildly successful people. Kate Spade was one of the recent ones within the last year or two. Great designer, wealthy, and the world at her fingertips, and yet she commits suicide. So the first step, brothers, to success is knowing God. And it can be scary when you have what the world has to offer. All the world has to offer, as I've used some of these examples, and you're not happy. And that actually is my testimony of how I came to know God. I grew up Catholic. So I grew up going to Catholic schools, going to church every Sunday. My father made sure we went to church every Sunday. And, I was taught Bible stories about Jesus and so on and so forth. But I never knew anything about having a personal relationship with God. I never knew anything about reading the Bible myself. I never knew anything about biblical Christianity. And so while I was raised in a Catholic family, I wasn't what I would call a Christian. I didn't know Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior. And I wasn't a bad kid, came from a good family. My parents in October celebrated their 55th wedding anniversary, which is a blessing. I grew up middle class, didn't really want for anything. Was a good student, good athlete, played football, basketball, and baseball in high school, played basketball in college. So people on the outside might look at me and say I was a good young man, a good positive role model. But God doesn't judge us by man's standards. He judges us by his standards. So a lot of times we make that mistake. I'm not a dope dealer, or, I'm not cheating on my wife, or I'm not, a criminal or something, and think we good. But none of us are good by God's standards. And I was getting involved in sexual immorality. I was getting drunk on a regular basis since early in high school. I'm in a fraternity. I was hazing fraternity pledges and things like that. So I was doing my share of sins, even though people would look at me and say, I was a good, positive young man. What happened was my sophomore year in college, I started dating a woman who was a Christian, a born-again Christian. And as you brothers know, oftentimes men get saved through a woman. So women got power. You need to let your daughters know that they have power to bring men to the Lord. You know, God gave them a little something that we want and need. I'll leave that alone, but you know what I'm talking about. So I started dating this woman, and she was really the first friend that I was really close to that introduced me to biblical Christianity. So I was open, you know, I used to pray. I was open to praying. So she would want to pray. And when we would pray, it would seem like she was praying to somebody she knew. Like she was praying to a friend, a brother, a father that she had a relationship with. And when I prayed, all I could pray were memorized prayers. You know, growing up Catholic, my prayers were, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art. Like, that's how I prayed. So when I knelt down to pray at night, I didn't talk to God in a personal way. I just said memorized prayers. So I noticed that she had something that I didn't have, you know, and I went to Bible study with her a few times on campus, and even fasted once with her and the Christians on campus. You know, like I said, I liked her. So I was, yeah, you want to fast? I'll fast, you know, all right. And so we were dating, and things were going well, but there was always a tension between us because she was trying to serve God and I wasn't. You know, I'm trying to go one way and she's trying to go the other. So we did that for about a year. And one time I went to church with her, and it was a charismatic church. People were all excited to be in church, which I had never seen, you know, growing up Catholic, no disrespect. But, you know, it was all about just counting down the minutes till I got out of this place when I went to church, you know. And so to see everybody excited and happy about being in church, that was strange to me. And they had the lyrics to the songs all up on the screen, and everybody was singing. And the man who spoke that day was a guest speaker, and he shared his testimony. He grew up in New York, and he had gotten addicted to drugs, was a rebellious teenager, got addicted to drugs. And at 16, I believe it was, he gave his life to Christ, and it turned his whole life around. And that was the first time in my life that I really was convicted of my sin. And I really recognized I needed to give my life to the Lord. Like God was not pleased with my life, the way I was living my life. Again, compared to some other people, maybe I look good, but I recognize that I'm sinful and I'm a sinner, and God's not pleased with my life. And so when they gave the altar call, I was convicted, and I knew I needed to go down and get saved, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to be a Christian. I didn't want to, you know, be a real Christian, you know. And so I literally was standing there. I felt like everybody in the church was pointing at me, like, you need to go down there and get saved. I felt like everybody knew that. And so I was literally praying, God, don't make this man come down and pull me out of my seat. You know, I felt like everybody knew I needed the Lord, and he didn't. So I didn't get saved, but I left that church knowing that I needed to give my life to Christ. And I ran for about 5 or 6 months. I didn't want to repent. I knew I didn't have to be perfect, obviously, but I knew, you know, I needed to repent and start and give God control of my life rather than me having control of my life. And I didn't want to. I didn't know any brothers that were living for the Lord. In hindsight, I knew a few looking back at it, but the dudes I hung with, kicked it with, my frat brothers, I didn't know anybody that was living for the Lord. I knew dudes that went to church, but as far as really trying to live for the Lord, I ain't know anybody. I was like, man, I ain't about to be the only one. You know, I'm not dude. They'll laugh me off campus. You know, so I ran for a few months, and God still blessed me. Bible says God lets his sun shine on the just and the unjust, lets his rain fall on the righteous and the unrighteous. He blessed me with a summer internship at the Cleveland Plain Dealer newspaper, which was the biggest newspaper in Ohio. I was finishing up my I had finished my junior year in college. So it was the summer before my senior year. I had the internship. I did well. And they told me at the end, as the internship was nearing its end, they told me that they liked what I did and they were going to hire me when I graduated a year later. So you can imagine how excited I was. I mean, knowing going into my senior year that I got a job waiting for me when I graduate, a job that's in sports writing, which will be fun, which will be something I enjoy. I'll make decent money. I was overjoyed. And that lasted for a few days. And then I began to feel like, is this it? Like, is this all that life is about? I got the promise of a good job now because I was raised to obtain the American dream. I was raised to think the whole purpose of life was getting the American dream. And, go to school, Chris, get good grades so you can go to a good college so you can get a good job and provide for your family. That's how I was raised. And that's good, but that in and of itself won't fulfill and satisfy. So now I felt like, you know what? I have that American dream in the palm of my hand. I wasn't rich, obviously, or anything like that, but within my grasp, I knew now I was going to get the American dream. And so I began to feel like, man, it's got to be more to life than this. And I knew it was Christ because I had been running, but like I said, I didn't want to give my life to Christ. So I was feeling empty inside, miserable even, because as I said, when you have everything going for you, promise of a good job, a girlfriend I love, doing what popular at school, on the basketball team, captain of the basketball team, all that. You got everything going for you and you still are empty inside, miserable. It can be frightening. And so we went to church one day. I went with my parents, my girlfriend, went to Catholic church. And I'm sitting there, they all excited. My parents excited, my mom, my son's gonna have a job and he's doing well. And my father, proud, my boy gonna be a sports writer. My girlfriend is happy because, she got looking like I might be a catch or something, you know what I'm saying? And so they are happy and I'm miserable inside. Now you couldn't tell, of course, I'm fronting, everything looked good on the outside, but I'm sitting there in church and I'm like empty and I'm like, God, I know I got to give you my life. So I tried to make a deal with God. I said, God, just give me my first semester. I was going into my senior year. I said, let me have my first semester and to do whatever I want, to kick it, to sow all my wild oats, get it all out of my system. And then in January, I'll get saved. I'll be 21. I'll be, ready to become an adult, all that. And in my mind, God was like, all right, cool, bet. Now I know really God wasn't saying that. The Bible says tomorrow's not promised. But in my mind, it was like, okay, me and God got this deal. Good. So I go up on campus. I'm feeling like I'm all right. I'm doing my thing, trying to kick it, all that. And it's just not the same. I just don't feel comfortable. I'm not, enjoying it. I'm feeling empty. And it's amazing, man, what God will use. I remember watching a movie about Elvis Presley and how y'all know Elvis, he had everything, right? He had all the money he could possibly hope for. He had all the fame, all the beautiful women, everything a man could want. And he was miserable, and he tried to fill that void, tried to get rid of that misery by being on drugs and using drugs. And that contributed to him dying of a drug overdose. I think he was 42 years old. I read an article about Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown, y'all know, some of y'all about my age, he was hot back then in 1989. Tenderoni, Don't Be Cruel, My Prerogative. He was the man. I read an article about him in Rolling Stone magazine. He said, I was happier when I was poor because of all the problems that money brought. And I was like, yo, these dudes got everything. They got everything you could want, and they not happy. They're empty, they're miserable. And again, I'm looking for loopholes. How can I get peace? How can I fill this void without giving my life to Christ? And so finally, my 21st birthday, my parents were going to take me and my girlfriend out to dinner. You know, supposed to be my first glass of wine and all that stuff with my folks. And, you know, so before we go out to eat, me and my dad run some errands. And I say to him, I said, you know, Daddy, I said, what keeps you going in life? You know, once you are successful, once you have a good family, nice house, you know, good job, well, what keeps you going? And he was like, well, you know, you want to make more money, or you want to get a promotion on the job, or you want to get a nicer car, bigger house, make more money to help people, help family members who need it, help other people. I mean, he was saying good things, but I knew none of that was going to fill the void that was within my heart. So really, what happened with me was God just broke me down. And I had a choice. I could either keep running and be miserable and empty, or I could give my life to Christ and have some peace and some joy. And so, believe it or not, on my 21st birthday, you know how you make a wish over the cake. Instead of making a wish, that's when I repented and gave my life to Jesus Christ. And so my natural birthday is actually my spiritual birthday. And now I've been saved for 31 years. And so most of my life, and I gotta be honest, I can't even imagine living my life without Christ. I'm sure, you know, I might be successful in some way, shape, or form, but I can't imagine having the peace and the joy, the security, the confidence that God has given me, and even the ability to enjoy my success fully. And, you know, because of my job, I've met so many wonderful people. Obviously, all the NBA players, LeBron, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Dr. J, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, like you can go on and on. But even Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Jesse Jackson, actors, Ving Rhames, Jamie Foxx, like you meet a lot of people in this business. And meeting all of them combined has not given me a fraction of the value to my life, the joy, the peace that meeting Jesus Christ gave me. And so, like I said, the first step to success, in my view, is knowing God through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Secondly, and I'll move hastily along, the second key, brothers, is hard work. Hard work. And there's this, I think sometimes we as Christians believe that work is the result of the fall, of sin. Like, man, if Adam and Eve hadn't sinned, we'd just be chilling by the pool, you know, we'd be kicking it all day and all night, you know. But when you really look at the scripture, work, God actually gave Adam a job before sin entered the world. He told him to dress and keep the Garden of Eden. That was his job. And he named all the animals. That was his job. So before Adam had a wife, before sin entered the world, Adam had a job. So having a job and working is part and parcel to manhood. And so we have to work hard. And we as Christians really should be among the hardest working people in the world. Not workaholics, but when you do put in your time, you work hard at it. Colossians 3:17 says, whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, giving thanks to God the Father through him. So everything we do is representative of Christ. So think of athletes that endorse products. Nike, McDonald's, Buick, Kia, whatever it might be, State Farm. When they sign on to endorse and represent that product, everything they do needs to be in line with the character and the principles and values of that company. So when Tiger Woods had his scandal years ago, what happened? All his endorsers dropped him for the most part because he wasn't representing them. Now, I know God wouldn't drop us, but we ought to have the same attitude that in everything we do, in the workplace, on the campus, in our household, with our wife, with our kids, wherever we're at in our fraternity, we are representing Jesus Christ. And that should guide the way we live and the things we do. And in representing him, we ought to be hard workers. So hard work, brothers, is part and parcel to manhood. And obviously, you know the benefits of work and hard work. It can help you be successful in life. And then finally, lastly, we have to instill, those of us who are older, who've been past this stage, we have to instill it in the younger brothers, in our young boys, our kids, the boys in the church, any young men that we have influence over. In the United States of America, in our society, a huge key to success, the real path to success is education. Education. Unless you're some superstar athlete, and even then you need an education because it'll enable you to know how to use your money. As we know, there's many athletes who've lost a lot of their money because maybe they weren't educated or they didn't even take advantage of many opportunities they had because they weren't educated. It's no mystery why LeBron James is so successful off the court. Even though he didn't go to college, he was a very good high school student. I asked him one time, I said, yo, you knew you were going to the pros out of high school, like after your freshman or sophomore year. I said, what made you keep studying? And, he had like a 3.3 or maybe even a better grade point average. And he said, I took the same competitiveness I had on the field or on the court. He was a football player too, but on the court into the classroom. So just like I wanted to compete and be great on the court, I took that into the classroom. So if all the students, my classmates, were raising their hands, asking questions, answering questions from the teacher, turning in their homework, doing well, and I wasn't, I felt bad. I felt like I wasn't competing, like I was losing. And so that helped him be a good student, even though he knew he wasn't going to college. And obviously you've seen the things he's been able to do off the court outside of basketball. But we got to push education on our young boys in particular, and girls, of course. What I did with my daughters, and they both were great students. They graduated summa cum laude from Penn, my daughter, and the other one had the GPA to graduate that. They didn't have that at Michigan, but she graduated with honors. From Monday through Thursday, when they, from the littlest, as long as we could remember, like, I don't know, when they were 3-4 years old, from Monday through Thursday, they couldn't watch television. Okay. So naturally they filled that time with other stuff. And once school started, they were reading books, they were doing their homework. And as they got older, they just did it naturally. They never even missed watching TV on those days. They could watch it on the weekends, but when it came to the week, they didn't even miss it. Nowadays, obviously, it's a little different, but I would say with your children, you need to institute something like that with social media. It's not, probably not, they can't be on social media Monday through Thursday, but you need to limit it maybe an hour a night or take it away for a night or, whatever it may be. Because we as African Americans, it's proven we watch more television than any other demographic in the country. And obviously we're behind academically as well. And I think there's a parallel there. So we need to, I would say, if you want your kids to really be successful in education, limit their time in front of the television and on social media. You don't have to take it away altogether, but limited, and make sure they prioritize their education. Because too many of our brothers especially realize it's too late. I always have brothers 25, and that's still relatively young, but in their 30s, in their 40s, coming up to me wanting to do what I do, be in broadcasting, and it's kind of late at that point. I have friends that I've had in the past in there, they realize at 25 that they really want to do the right thing, or they want to be a responsible and respectful citizen. But they spent time in the juvenile detention center. They spent time in prison. Or when they were in school, they didn't do well. Their grades were horrible. They didn't go to college. They didn't graduate, whatever it may be. And not that they can't be successful with that, but they've dug themselves a hole. So now while everybody else starting here, they're kind of here in a hole, because they got a record, or their GPA is horrible, or they just have a GED instead of a degree or diploma. And again, not that they can't overcome that and become successful, but that puts you in a hole that's going to make it harder and more difficult. And so let's prioritize education. I'll leave you with this. Well, let me say this about education too. Education allows you to choose your career. Okay, a lot of people just work because they got to work, which is respectable. You do need to provide for your family, and you do need to work a job. But many people aren't in a job they enjoy, aren't in a job that they would choose. One thing that an education does is allow you to choose your job. I chose to be a sports writer, sports broadcaster. My wife is a medical doctor. That's the girl that introduced me to Christ. We got married. She's a medical doctor. She chose to be a medical doctor because she had an education. And so I would leave you with this formula for you young people out there, or you can share it with your boys. This is the formula I use to choose my career. I took something I enjoyed, which was sports, plus something I was gifted at naturally. I was always a gifted writer. I always, I just had writing ability. And so I took sports plus writing and said, let me try to become a sports writer. That'll be my career. And because I had done well in school, my father made sure I always had good grades. When I realized my junior year in college that I wanted to be a sports writer, because I had the grades, I was able to capitalize on that career. And my interview for that internship, they knew I didn't have any experience. The guy even said, I see you don't have any experience. I didn't really write much on the school newspaper, but I had good grades. I was personable. I was involved on campus in a lot of activities outside of even sports. And he said, I'm going to give you a shot. So if you don't do well in school, a lot of times when you figure out what you want to do, you still may not be able to capitalize on it. And so even if you don't know yet what you want to do, even if you're wondering why in the world am I studying all this American history? Why do I need geometry? Why do I need to know this? Do the best you can at it, because there will become a time when you realize and start thinking about what you want to do, and that you want to be responsible and become an adult and not hustle and all that. And that education will come in handy and help you realize what you want to do. So, brothers, those are my keys to success: knowing God personally through Jesus Christ, working hard, being a hard worker, and prioritizing education. All right, so I'll pass it back to the pastor, and I can take questions.
Yo, that was awesome, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate you also sharing your story with that. Didn't know that. I figured you would feel comfortable because our church is 90% Catholics.
Oh, really? 90%? Wow.
You got some.
Shout out to all the noobs.
They right there. You got some frat brothers on the line with you.
Okay, Keenan. Okay,
Keenan, Kenny.
All right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
I know you got a good church.
I be trying to grow the church, but every time a Q dog want to join, they like run them out.
They don't stick around.
They don't stick around. We can't help it.
Nicholas didn't stick around either.
I know Philly is, big with Noops. And we actually used to go to the Greek picnic. Remember they used to have, I think, at Fairmount Park. I used to go there in college. And yeah, man, crazy. That's great though.
So, hey, here's a couple of questions for you. So being a Christian in that environment, especially in that NBA environment and everything that you do, what is that like for you? And then do you find a lot of players also carry the faith, that type of scenario? And what is it like for them?
I think there are, honestly, it's probably a representative number of Christian players and coaches, even in the league, as similar to, the general society. Mm-hmm. There are dudes that definitely follow Christ. And then, as you know, in the Black community, most of the brothers have some relationship with church. You know what I'm saying? Like they went to church as a child, their mother or grandma dragged them to church or, whatever it was. But they're definitely, as in the Black community as a whole, most of the Black athletes have had some exposure to church and the gospel. And then, but, there's a lot that, again, like the general society, that just are churchgoers. And, pregame chapel, some go out of superstition. Okay. Let me get a prayer in, maybe I have a great game or whatever. And then there are those that are really, it's a real big part of their life and they sincerely are trying to follow the Lord. And, that environment, it's obviously a lot of temptations, even on my level. Obviously I'm not an athlete, but, I'm around that and I'm at the All-Star game, All-Star weekend and going to different events and stuff. And I would say you have to know what you can and can't handle, and if you can't be in a certain environment without falling into temptation and, really, going against your biblical principles, then you need to stay out of that environment. If you are strong enough and you can be in certain, we all have our various things we're tempted by more than others. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And so you really have to know that, I think, to really stay strong in your walk as a believer. And what I found is people respect it, even if they don't like it or agree with it, they'll respect it. And, I've been to, a lot of the parties, the All-Star weekend and things like that. But I also think there's a lot of things that I don't get invited to.
Okay. Or
even asked to get down with, even asked to participate in, which is a blessing. The Bible says that the Lord God is a sun and a shield, and so God protects us. You hear all the horror stories about Hollywood and, parties and women and this and that, but dudes, going way past stuff like that, and just whether it's drugs, whether it's messing with men, whatever it may be. And because people know how I roll, I've never had somebody try to get me down with something like that. Okay. And I think that's a blessing, because I haven't seen all that, mm-hmm. All the, just crazy stuff, like I said, I've been at many parties and all that, but I ain't at the after parties and, where there's stuff going down. And so, but yeah, I like I said, I think the key is you rather, more so than even being liked, not that I'm disliked, but more so than being liked, you want to be respected. Because if people respect you, then they won't, walk over you and stuff. So if you live it, they respect it. Now, if they think you're a hypocrite, mm-hmm. just like really in any, wherever you might be, then they won't respect you. If you're talking about God and we should do this, we should live like this, but then you're not living it, then you'll lose a lot of respect.
Wow. I wanted to ask you about the bubble experience for those guys. And obviously reading and watching, it sounded like it was difficult for a lot of those players. But at the same time, me personally as a fan, I actually enjoyed it somewhat a little bit better because it seemed like the games were more competitive. It seemed like there were really no blowouts and things of that nature. So what was your thoughts on the bubble experience for those guys?
Well, I thought it was a great success. I mean, for the NBA to put that on and have no positive test, I mean, that was great. And it was a testament to the players, commitment. I mean, look, we don't want to paint it like it was torture, because they were staying on a nice campus and nice hotel and, and all that, playing basketball. But it's still a challenge. You're away from your family for several months. You're stuck in the same environment. Guys who are used to having the world at their fingertips and, can do any and everything. And you're stuck in this situation. So it was challenging, as we heard many of the players talk about. But they sucked it up and they went through it and they showed the discipline and the professionalism. So I thought they did a great job. Like you said, the level of play and really the competitiveness was great. And I think what you saw, because you saw a lot of players who played surprisingly well, guys that aren't what we would call stars or superstars that put up those types of numbers. And what it was is, talking to people around the league, there are some guys that just love to ball and they're not in it for the extra stuff. And they may even not perform as well when the crowd and all of that brings is there. And, the fans and the things they're yelling and the travel and all the extra things in life that you have to deal with in addition to ball. But in the bubble, I mean, all you had was ball. That's it, And so a lot of dudes, like in summers, and whether they play in Las Vegas, Atlanta, Houston, LA, a lot of times where you might see a bunch of pros playing, and if you watch them, it might be a dude playing with several all-stars, a guy that's a journeyman or just pretty good, and he might be killing dudes. And you're like, yo, why don't he play like this during the season? And it's because there are some guys that are more built for that and they're not built to succeed with all the other stuff going on. And I think that's what you saw in the bubble. Not that a Devin Booker, a Dame Lillard and all those guys won't ball when they get out of the bubble, because obviously they will. But you did see some surprising names scoring huge numbers, playing well. So I think it'll be interesting to see if some of those guys can keep it up outside of the bubble. But I agree with you. The competitiveness was great. And I thought it was a great success, and congratulations to LeBron and the Lakers and, getting his 4th ring.
Now, I know they just came to an agreement going back on the 22nd, that type of scenario, but with things looking like they're going to start spiking again, are they considering another bubble option or just are they considering traveling with no fans?
Yeah, no, they're not considering the bubble at this point because, as tough as that was, you saw on players, even Paul George and some others talking about the mental challenges of it. I honestly don't know that the players, certainly not right away, would even be willing to go back into a bubble like that, So I don't see that happening. But like you said, they'll be limited fans or no fans in the different arenas depending on the state. They're gonna travel. You're gonna play teams in your division a lot more. If you even say New York is in, LA to play the Lakers, they may play the Lakers twice. Play the Clippers twice. Try to play a team. So you don't have to travel as much while you're in LA. Get 4 or 5 games in or whatever it may be. So those are the things they're looking at. But you're right. It's interesting. And we actually were talking about this on my radio show. My partner, you see the college football games getting canceled. Rob Parker, my partner, he thinks they should cancel this football season. And I'm like, you know, no, you just got to play through it.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we know cancellations are going to happen like they did in baseball and in the NFL, but this is the new normal for the time being, and you have to push through it. And if a team only can play 7 games, so be it.
Mhm.
You know, but you can push through it. So I think that's what the NBA is looking to do, because you do have to balance between the safety and health and the economics.
Yeah.
And that's why the players agreed to the early start, December 22nd, because they would have been giving up roughly $1 billion if they had started in January like they wanted to versus December. So economics is a part of it too.
Absolutely. And who else has some questions? Well,
Yeah, I got a question. First off, Chris, phenomenal job, man. And
Thank you.
on Reman Live together as well. You killed it there. I didn't even know you were a noob at that time, so now it explains it all. But you know, of course, achievement in every field of human. But my question for you is about, you know, when you're shining your light for other people, right? Because as you guys were talking about the bubble, I realized that it's like a microcosm of faith, right? You're in that spiritual bubble when you're in church or that men's conference, man, you high for Christ. And then you get back out there to everything else, right? And, you know, and I got to give Pastor Steve public credit because he helped me get saved, right? I joined HGI as that college noob, and I was saved. And then he helped me get saved, like, wait, out of church? Right?
He negotiated with God to get a couple years instead of a semester.
Yeah, right. I needed years. And I thought God said yes. I thought God told me to be active in church, you're good.
Right.
That wasn't, Pastor Steve showed me that wasn't the way, right? So how do you go from bubble faith, right? And how would you recommend that men go out, and once they know that they're comfortable being in the world and still being in faith, how would you recommend that they help other people get there without being judgmental or too churchy?
Right. That's a great question. I'm gonna be honest. One thing that helped me, believe it or not, when I got saved, I was a senior in college. I witnessed to my brother. He was going to Howard in DC. And it seemed like he got saved. He was feeling what I was saying. But he started going to the Nation of Islam Power Studies. This was 1989, you know, and the Nation was getting big. Farrakhan was getting big and all that. And he joined the Nation. And so we would debate a lot once he joined the Nation and, you know, go back and forth. And he would challenge me, like, you know, they would always talk about, man, y'all Christians, y'all ain't real. Y'all just a bunch of hypocrites. Y'all doing this, y'all doing that. And, you know, and one time he even said, man, the reason that you know why I became a Muslim instead of a Christian? He said, because the men in the mosque looked more like the men I read about in the Bible than the men in church, you know? And I know it's not about legalism and all that, of course, but it did challenge me. I looked at what Paul said. I think it was in Corinthians. He said, he talked about running the race. And he said, you know, we run for, in the world, they run for trophies and things like that. He said, how much more should we run for Christ, you know, for the eternal reward? And I thought about that. I said, if my brother who was living a clean life and really dedicated to his faith, if he can be that dedicated and committed for what I believe is a false religion, then how much more committed should I be to Christ, you know? And I also want to show him this is real. You know, Jesus Christ is real, and he's really changed my life and set me free from the power of sin and so on and so forth. And, you know, and so that was a good challenge for me and helped me grow. And obviously, you know, y'all know Muslims, he was coming at me with the Bible and the Quran, and it really forced me to know what I believed and to learn, you know, the Bible and what I believe so I could counter him. But that helped me grow. And then I just really wanted to help reach men for Christ because of the changes it made in my life. Being one who really wants to see, you know, great things from the Black community and for the Black community, see our communities really, experience a great quality of life. I felt like if we could reach men for Christ, then, we can really transform our families and our communities. But as far as, like you said, once you're in the world, not being judgmental and stuff, I think there's a comfort level, that once you really get secure in who you are, then you can, be in certain environments and be a light, and you just mature. I mean, I think a lot of times when you're young in the Lord, especially you catch fire for the Lord, you like a bull in the china shop, in a lot of cases, you just, judging everybody and, all that. But like you said, as you mature, and you recognize better ways of how to share the faith with people. And what I do is I just try to live it, and people see it in you. And then, as the scriptures say, be ready to preach it in season and out of season. So people seeing you live out your faith, when they go through struggles, they may come to you. I've had that happen many times where they'll come to you and say, man, can you pray for me? Or, man, I'm going through this. How can how do you handle things like this? And that's an opportunity to pray with them, an opportunity to share the faith with them. And, so things like that. I've had conversations about faith with Stephen A. Smith and many others. And there are times like you need to be, like the Bible says, speak the truth in love. There was one time years ago, I was talking with Stephen A. and we were talking about the Lord, and, he was talking about he's trying to get closer to the Lord and all that. And I challenged him. I said, well, I know you're doing this and that, if you're really living for the Lord, you're going to, you need to look at this. And he texted me later that day and was like, yo, man, I was thinking about what you said, and I want to thank you for, for your words. I really was listening, and so, there you learn how you can share, like you said, the truth in love. I think that's a great way to think about it. Obviously, that's scriptural, but we're committed to the truth. We don't just gloss over, oh yeah, it's all right, this all right, this all right, you can do this and that. But you say it in a way that's loving, compassionate, not judgmental, understanding we may have been there before, or we could fall and be there. And so I think that's the best way to be guided, is speak the truth in love.
Good. You got one, Ken, Paul?
Yeah, I got a question. One of the things you mentioned was that the keys to success was hard work. But then you also mentioned a little bit before that was that work can become, I guess, fill that void that gets there. So how do you balance the hard work piece versus it not becoming, I guess, the point where it becomes a drug or filling that void? And you also mentioned, you keep it in perspective where you have God, family, then career. I know sometimes we can get those things messed up because you say, well, I'm working really hard, but it's because I'm working for my family, so I can do all this for my family and whatnot. So how do you keep all those things in perspective, so you have the right priorities, and still making your way to the success?
Right. Yeah, it could be a challenge because in America it's a rat race. I mean, it really is. And I mean, we work. I've been to Italy, been to Spain, and they don't, they work hard, obviously, but it's different. It's not like in Spain, they take a siesta, a nap every afternoon at like 2:00. Like the whole society shuts down and people go nap and then they come out. It's a little more leisurely, and they're a little behind. They're not quite as advanced as America. Obviously, they've got the internet and things like that, but it's not to the level we have it. And maybe that's the payoff, but they're not in as much of the rat race, and there's something to be said about that. So you do have to be careful with it. But I think if you keep your, like you said, God, family, career, and not just know that, yeah, theoretically, those are my priorities, but really think about it and focus on it. And if your time with God is limited to the point where, you know, you feel that relationship is not what it used to be, is not what it always was, there's going to be seasons. Don't get me wrong. There will be seasons in your life, seasons early in my walk with Christ, where I had more time. I wasn't as busy with my job, and I was in the Word a lot more than I am now. And a lot of what I know now is going off of those years where I learned more. You know what I'm saying? And I don't have as much time to get in the Word, but my faith is still just as strong. And then same thing with your children. If you notice you're not spending much time with them, you don't know what's going on in their life because of work, that's when I think you can evaluate, okay, am I just spending too much time, you know, with my job? You know, when I'm home, am I bringing the job home too much? Obviously, sometimes you're going to be working at home in a lot of jobs, but you just have to make it, always remember those priorities and make a conscious effort to live by them. You know, when I was obviously I covered the NBA, I did a lot of traveling. And so I was covering the Knicks, the Nets, then the Knicks when my daughters up until about their 4th birthday. And I was traveling. And then I remember at that time, I was like, I don't want to travel as much, because now, you know, when they were little, they didn't, you know, they don't even necessarily recognize how much you're gone. But as they got older, I wanted to make sure I was there even more. And so I was fortunate that, you know, I was able to get a job where I started covering the whole league versus the Knicks, an individual team where I had to go everywhere that team went, and I covered the league. So I was able to be at home more. Then I went to ESPN, the magazine. I was able to be at home more. So it worked out for me that way. But I'll say this, I turned down jobs because it would have negatively impacted my family. So early in my career, when I actually started out answering phones at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, sitting in the office answering phones. Before the internet, 1990, what they would do is in every sports department would have a group of people that sat in the department. I would be there from 3 to midnight, me and others, and people would call up randomly and ask you questions like, yo, I was in Cleveland, so who was the starting line, the starting 5 for the Cavs when they won the Miracle at Richfield, you know, this playoff game, you know, in 1976. So we would have to either know it or you have to go look it up and then tell the people on the phone, yo, me and my boys, we having a debate, you know, who was the starting left tackle on the Browns in 1981, you know, junk like that. Because now you could just look it up on the internet. Back then you couldn't. So I started doing that. And so then I moved on to covering high school sports. And then the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, the editor from there, offered me a job to cover the Green Bay Packers. And I would have moved to Green Bay, Wisconsin, Wisconsin. But I was engaged. My fiance wasn't going to be there. And so I turned it down. And then I also turned down the chance to cover Ohio State a little bit later because I would have had to move to Columbus, Ohio, for similar reasons. And so you can't be afraid to turn down some what looks like great opportunities if it's not going to be the best thing for your family. And obviously in my case, even though I turned those things down, it obviously worked out, you know, and the Lord worked it out. So I just constantly think about those priorities: God, family, career, and that'll help you keep things in perspective.
I had a similar question. It was more so about balance. You said you were married about 25 years. So, you know, we all like sports, but the wives sometimes want extra attention. How do you balance your love of sports plus also taking care of, you know, spending time with your wife and the kids and all of that? Yeah, man. And I tell you what, my wife is not into sports at all. I mean, if you ain't Michael Jordan or LeBron, she don't even know you. Like, I mean, she's not into sports.
My girls, because of her, you know, they're not really into sports either, which I like because like they not enamored with a superstar athlete. You know what I'm saying? Like an NBA player can't roll up to my daughters and impress them because he's an NBA player. You know, they may end up liking him anyway, but you know, not because they're not going to be starstruck by a star athlete, which is nice. But you know, it's just recognizing the differences between you and your wife and how those can be great for your relationship. You know, so my wife and I, we have gone, and obviously with the girls sometimes, to athletic events. So she'll come to those with me, and you know, and then my wife from New York City, she was into Broadway and dance, you know, going to see dances and, you know, Broadway plays, which I've never been into anything like that. But, you know, going to those with her, even before we got married, it opened me up to that. And I liked it. You know, there's some good Broadway shows out there, you know, so just trying to, you know, I've learned from her and she's learned from me, and that's actually enhanced the marriage. But, you know, like now I have this radio show. My Sundays are all football, you know, because I need to watch all the games for my radio show so I can talk about the different games. But a lot of it too is she's got her hobbies. She's got her things she's, you know, into, and she's busy. So it's tough. Like if you don't have a wife, like say your wife doesn't work, then that can really make it tougher, I think. Not that that's a problem, because I think there's a great value in that. But one thing that helped my wife and I early in our marriage, like once we got married, I almost immediately started traveling and covering the NBA. And it worked out because she was early in her fellowship for medicine, and she was just as busy as me. So she didn't have time. She wasn't sitting around at home, you know, missing me, you know, thinking about where I'm at or what I'm doing, or she wanted to go do something. We were both just so busy that when we came together, it was good. And so I think you got to recognize that too. If your wife is a housewife, then you probably do have to even go extra to make sure you giving her time, even to get out on her own, but also to spend time with her. And like I said, if she's as busy as you, it might not be as much of an issue. So, you know, again, you just gotta God, family, and work, and know that, you know, spending that time with your wife is very important. Dating your wife, you know, and hanging out even with other married couples is good, you know, and not always hanging with the fellas, you know. I mean, that's good. Of course, we all need male bonding, but some brothers I know, like they hang out with the dudes too much, you know. And I wonder what they doing. Like, you know, you chasing women, you know. But some dudes are like, they can't give up hanging with the boys, you know what I mean? Hanging with the fellas, hanging with the noobs, whatever it is. And again, there's a time for that, but you can't, if that's taken away from your quality time with your wife and she got an issue with it, or even if it was vice versa, that's a problem, you know. Like what Ecclesiastes says, basically there's a time for everything, you know. So there's a time for that, but then there's a time not to do that. So
that was a good question. Hey, I'll shut it down with these last two questions for you, Chris. One, it just hit my phone that the Ivy League is canceling. Not only did they cancel the tournament, they're canceling the whole winter season. Do you think that's going to be a pattern with other colleges?
You know what? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't. I mean, remember the Ivy League canceled football too. Yeah. And the Ivy League, let's just keep it real, doesn't make money off football and basketball like these big conferences. So it's a little easier for them to say we're not going to do it. But my thing is, last night, during my radio show, I had my TV on, and you know, it was a bunch of high school games on ESPN.
Yeah.
You know, some of the top teams in the country. And so my thing is, if high schools, and you know, in football, Pop Warner's playing, you know, little leagues are playing. And so if kids and high school age people can play sports, then I don't understand why colleges can't play. And so I don't expect it. I mean, obviously it's possible, but like I said, I think they're going to do everything they can to have these seasons. They'll be disrupted, like football has been, but I think they're going to definitely try to have it at almost all costs, because it is a lot of money, a lot of jobs, that could be lost too if they didn't, have those seasons.
Hey, I want to end with this question, Chris. I'm glad you were here. I didn't even think about this until you were actually talking. I have my son's here with me. He's the 8th grader.
How you doing?
And, it's amazing. At the 8th grade, he already knows what he wants to do and wants to be, and so he's already taking courses at Hofstra University in their sports broadcasting division. So I want to have him on here and let him ask you a question about that.
That's great, man. That's great.
What's like one thing like that you need to get to where you are right now?
That you need to what?
That you need to get where you are right now.
Well, obviously your education, and you can look on the TV and see other than the superstar athletes, everybody else, graduated from college. Stephen A. Smith, myself, Skip Bayless, we could go on and on, Michael Wilbon, Jamel Hill. So you're on the path, obviously, to getting your education. I would say it's great that you know what you want to do at such a young age, because it is competitive. Obviously, there are a lot of boys and girls even, and men and women that want to work in sports. So you have to work hard at it. You have to be the best you can be. And if maybe there's something that differentiates you from the others, that's good as well. But nowadays, see, whether you could really get started. Obviously, I'm sure they got you doing great stuff at Hofstra, but with YouTube, you can do your own channel, you can do your own blog, you can do your own website, and you can actually get a lot of experience like in front of the camera now, talking. You can talk about the games and the NBA or NFL on camera on your YouTube channel, and then compare your stuff to, what you see on television. You can do debates with your friends or with your dad or something like that, on those shows. What I used to do in college is I would write articles about games I watched on television and compare my articles to the ones in the newspaper, so that's something you can do. It benefits too to be well-rounded. Like I was trained, I was a writer. I was a sports writer, because when I graduated from college in 1990, you could go one of two routes. You could go print journalism, which was writing, or you could go broadcast, radio or television. And I went print. It was easier to get a job for me in print. And then what happened was later on, the two began to merge. So myself, Stephen A. Smith, Mike Wilbon, Tony Kornheiser, Skip Bayless, Rachel Nichols, none of us have been trained really in television. We were writers. I remember all of those people were writers. And what they began putting writers on television for their information, and those that had good information and those that had some type of charisma or were comfortable in front of the camera, basically morphed into TV personalities. And that's what's happened with me. So it's good to be well-rounded. Like you need to be able to write. You need to be comfortable in front of the camera. Maybe you need to know how to operate the camera. When I wrote for ESPN the magazine, toward the end of my time there, they began asking us to take cameras onto our interviews with the athletes and then do something with them on camera, film them, doing something or whatever, which I didn't like, because when I wrote, I wanted to be focused and always zeroed in on the interview, because I'm thinking about how I'm going to write the story as I'm talking to them. But that's the way the business was going. So you had to do it and start interviewing them on camera and things like that too. So if you're well-rounded, you may find that you like a different part of the business. You right now you're thinking you want to be a broadcaster. in front of, maybe you're thinking I want to be like a Stephen A. Smith and, debate. But you may find out that I really like play-by-play. I really like calling the games more than, just being a debater and stuff. So be well-rounded in the industry, because that'll give you more options too when you do get out. But it's great that you could get a head start. Like I said, website, blog, YouTube, even doing it with your friends, practicing it. You need to have energy. Don't go overboard, but there's a certain energy you need, and some type of charisma. There are a lot of athletes I thought when they were playing, I thought that they would be really good in front of the camera as broadcasters because they were handsome, they were articulate, they knew the game, they had a name. I thought they were gonna be great. But then they got in front of the camera and they were too soft-spoken. They were very soft-spoken and, didn't have the energy. And again, you don't go overboard where you're getting crazy, but there is a level of energy that you need in this field. And as you do more and more of it, you'll get more and more comfortable and you'll get better with that. So yeah, those are a few things, but also watch the people you really like and maybe even the people you don't like, but study the people on TV, from the debaters to the play-by-play to the color commentators. Like the play-by-play would be a Mike Breen, color commentary would be Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy. The anchors, Sage Steele, John Butchiegross, all these, different people. Study all the different ones. Just like if you want to be a basketball player, if I wanted to be a point guard, I would look at John Stockton's game, take something from that. I look at Kyrie Irving. I look at Damian Lillard. Take little things from different players' games. Steph Curry, take this from him. Take this from Magic Johnson. Look at the people on television and see what you like, what you might want to emulate, what you think worked, what you think didn't work, and incorporate that into your style, obviously putting your own personal flavor over it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for doing that, man. I really appreciate
No,
that.
that's great. That's great to have him interested in that, man. That's really good to hear.
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks again, man, for just joining us today. And it really was a blessing to us. I mean, we really appreciate it. We definitely learned a lot. It's definitely going to be a blessing to everybody. And we look forward to connecting with you also again in the future and praying the blessings of God on you on all the different endeavors that you have, man.
No, I appreciate that, fellas. And, good. What's up to all the noobs, yo, and
yo.
Yeah, it's great to be on with you guys. Good luck with your Eagles and Sixers. All right, we'll see what they do. But all right, fellas, I enjoyed
get that
it,
James
man.
Harden deal going. That's all,
Hey, you never know. You never know for Ben Simmons. All right, fellas.
Thanks again.
Peace.
All right, thank you.